Hi guys, my name's Doug and welcome to my messy garage. Fall is here. Unfortunately, that means that working outside in the backyard is going to be coming to a pretty quick end here. I need to clean up my garage a little bit so I have some space to work. And one of the things that I have kicking around my garage that I'd really like to get cleaned up is a couple of big bags of pop cans. A few years ago, I made a Backyard Foundry based on the design from a King of Random, or the King of Random, Grant Thompson. He made it in a, 1 gallon or 2 gallon bucket using play sand and plaster of Paris. And here you can see some aluminum that I melted up using the foundry. Worked quite well. However, it was sitting on the floor in my garage while I was working on another project, and something fell on it and broke the lid. So I'd like to clean up the pop cans, make some more aluminum muffins, or what I'd really like to make is some cast aluminum stock that I can use on my lathe for turning rather than buying aluminum bar stock. I don't know how well that's going to turn out, but it's worth trying. And in order to do that, I need to fix my foundry. I will put a link below to the King of Random video that's had many millions of views that shows how to build one of these. Kind of a disclaimer, this is dangerous stuff. You're dealing with, in my case, propane. You're dealing with molten aluminum. If you decide you want to do one of these things, be very, very careful and do a lot of research before you start melting aluminum with a propane torch. If this were to land on your skin, it would cause serious burns and permanent injury. So, the scary stuff out of the way, let me show you what I have left of my original foundry and show you what I want to do to make the repairs. Okay, so here we have, it's a stainless steel bucket that I got at Princess Auto. A graphite, I believe it is, crucible that I got from Amazon. I think Amazon or eBay. Again, it's been a few years. And my foundry. I'd like to try and fix up this rough edge. You can see the steel wool that was used essentially as rebar. And I want to use to make a new lid that we can put on there to contain everything. For a torch, I don't have it here. You can see the large hole that I cut, and I picked up a tiger torch, and that's what I was using for blasting in there for heat. Unfortunately, the propane or the tiger torch by itself does not produce quite enough heat to consistently melt the aluminum. What I ended up doing was putting a little bit of low pressure air in the back side of the tiger torch so there was more air coming in, and almost immediately the aluminum started melting very consistently. So follow along as I rebuild the lid for my foundry and do a few minor repairs, and hopefully we can get this back functional so that I can clean up the big pile of pop cans that I have. So the materials we're going to need for this lid, we've got a couple of U-bolts that we'll use for lifting the lid off. We've got some leftover steel wool that I used when I made the foundry originally. And we've got some plaster of Paris. And a tub of play sand. Now, this play sand is fairly coarse. One of the things that you require when you're doing casting is it's called green sand. And green sand is essentially, you take play sand that comes in a, 10-pound bag or whatever at the hardware store, and you run it through sieve, wire mesh sieve, ideally a coarse one and then a fine one, and you get the finest parts of the sand that you possibly can. That becomes your green sand. Then you mix it with ground up kitty litter, which is a clay, and add water, and it makes a sand that will hold its shape. This little bucket is one of multiple that I had left over after making my green sand, and it will work just fine as the granular material with wherever it says plaster of Paris. There we are, plaster of Paris. For form, we're going to use the bottom couple of inches of a 5-gallon pail. In the center, I'm going to force the cottage cheese container down into the middle of it, and what that will do is that will give me a nice center hole that I can use to feed pop cans into the furnace. I don't think this is technically a foundry, but this is a blast furnace for melting aluminum. So, equal parts of play sand and plaster of Paris are required. So let's start mixing. It seems kind of strange that I was interested in wiping the water out of this. The problem that you get into is when the plaster of Paris hits water, the timer kind of starts and it starts to set up. And we don't want plaster to set up too fast. So first off, let's open up some steel wool. To make our rebar. Now I thought about using some welding rod to make actually like a rebar to go in here, but I'm going to try just using the steel wool at first, and if this doesn't work, then I guess I'll have to make another video showing making a better one. That is 3, let's make 4. We'll dump the play sand in. I think I want more. Number 2. That looks pretty good. We'll give it a quick mix. Get the sand and plaster mixed together. Push that down in the bottom. You can see that approximately the lid should be about the same thickness as the cottage cheese container. Okay, I would say that is a good mixture. Let's add some water. Now I don't want to add the same amount of water as play sand, probably about 3/4 as much. I'll mix it up here and see how it looks. Still a little bit thick. I think we need some more. Now one thing I've found mixing cement in the past is that cement will go from being way too dry, not going to work at all, to being absolutely soaking wet, too runny to be to set up properly very quickly. Very little bit of additional water can make a big difference to the runniness. This, however, as you can see, is starting to come together quite nicely. So, I think we're going to use the bigger container, just because it'll hold some water and act as a weight. So there is the container. Let's put our rebar in. That's one. Not good. The water just fell over and thinned out the mixture a little bit. That'll be okay. And our final piece of reinforcing. Now we want to pull it in from the edge just a little bit if we can. We don't want steel wool sticking out the edges. And we place water in the middle. We take our U-bolt handle and our other U-bolt handle, and we hold our center core down in place. I can do that without having everything fall to pieces. And we'll hold on while things set up a little bit here. I'll bring you back in a couple minutes when things have started to set up. Hey guys, we're back at it here. It's probably been about 45 minutes. I don't know, I kind of lost track of the time. I've dumped the water out of the center bucket and any last little bit that was laying on top. Now we can take the center bucket out. That gets us down close to the bottom. Probably we let this sit too long. It's going to be a little tricky to get it to break loose from this bucket. Yep, I would say we did. While it's not my first choice, I would like to save the main bucket that we're using. If I have to cut it apart, it's not the end of the world. There we go. A little bit of cracking around the edge. Maybe a little smoke come out of here. Oh, that sounded promising. Well, it appears to be basically broken around the outer ring, or broken free around the outer ring. Oh, that looks promising. I don't know if you can see that or not. Get my stupid arms out of the way. Well, let's put it on its side and see if we can walk it out of there. That looks like success to me. Just that lip out of there. Yeah, it's a little crumbly around the edges here and there, but I think for the most part that's a success. So, quite happy with that. What we're going to end up doing now is leave it sit to dry, because if we were to put heat onto this right now, it would most definitely crack. So let it dry up, get solid. Hopefully it's not going to crack as it dries. Plaster of Paris has a nasty tendency to do that. And I will bring you guys back. I'm going to guess it's probably going to be tomorrow, and we will put some heat to this little furnace or foundry or whatever you want to call it. We'll see it melt some aluminum cans. See you tomorrow. Hi guys, we're back again. It's been, I don't know, 3 or 4 days since I made the lid for the furnace, and I think it's set up solid enough that we can fire things up. But before we do, we've got to make up a little bit of a magic powder solution. When you melt aluminum, scrap aluminum, pop cans, whatever, you're going to have aluminum and you're going to have the leftovers. You're going to have paint from the can, there's going to be oxide layers, those sorts of things. And that floats to the top, and we scrape it off with a spoon that I've welded together out of some scrap steel. But to help separate the good stuff from the bad stuff, we need to make up a little bit of a magic solution. What we have here, and brand isn't specific, this is just stuff I got off of Amazon. We've got washing soda, and we've got a little bit of coarse pickling salt. Doesn't have to be anything terribly fancy. And we've got some squares of aluminum foil. The aluminum foil will of course melt with the aluminum, and that will give us that will help the garbage separate from the good stuff. So what we do is we will melt a flask full of, or mostly full of aluminum. So it will take several pop cans to fill it up. Then we drop one of these in, give it a little stir, mix it up good, and let the salt and washing soda melt in with the aluminum, mix it up again, and then we can pour it off. Now ultimately I want to turn these pop cans into blocks of aluminum that I can use for machining on my lathe or when I get a milling machine as such. But for now what we're going to make is we're going to make some more aluminum muffins. These can easily be remelted, and again will help clean them up a little bit further. This is just a standard old muffin tin that I had kicking around. As you can see, it has seen some fire. And we will just fill the muffin tray up and make some more pucks. I'll bring you back when we get outside and get set up. Sorry for the wind noise. Hopefully it's not going to be too bad. Kind of in a little bit of a shelter of the garage here. We're going to get this thing fired up. I'm going to remind everybody that dealing with heat, molten metal, stuff that's hot enough to melt an aluminum pop can will do a lot of damage to your skin if you get it on. I'm going to be wearing welding gloves, and I'm going to put on a natural fiber shirt, and I'm going to be wearing a auto darkening welding mask, which shouldn't auto darken, but at least it will protect me if there's a little bit of a splatter. Now the reason for the natural fiber shirt is that synthetic fibers, when they get heat on them, tend to melt and stick to your skin, whereas natural fiber shirt will still burn, but it won't stick to your skin. So we'll use the standard propane torch to start the tiger torch. center. You can probably hear that the tiger torch isn't burning very well. So I'll give it a little shot of compressed air. Before my battery dies, I'll flip these over and you can see what we ended up with. There we go. Now we definitely don't want to be touching those. as they will still be several hundred degrees. So an hour or so later, the aluminum seems to have cooled off. Definitely not hot to the touch anymore. The furnace was still a little warm when I put it away, but it not hot enough to cause a problem. You can see got a nice little pile of aluminum pucks. They're reasonably clean. You can see the bottom, some of them are very clean, some of them are a little dirty. This is more than likely the coating in the muffin tin. The muffin tins, as you can see, is well cooked at this point, but these unused muffin cups have a coating on them, and that's what you see here. But the muffins that were poured into previously used cups turned out nice and clean. This was my first attempt. This is scraps from airplane building, 6061 T6. Higher silicon content in it, I believe, a little like almost like a sand. And I don't think I got the dross separated out of this quite as well as I did with this stuff. The purpose of creating these cupcakes of aluminum is these can be melted down fairly easily in the furnace when I go to actually do some casting, and there won't be very much dross left. You saw the size of the pile that was left from melting down the pop cans, so definitely don't want to be losing half of my cup of aluminum to dross when I go to cast something. Anyways, that's basically all I have, and as I said at the beginning of the video, if you're going to try this, this video is not a how-to. There are better how-to videos on YouTube. I'll link to the King of Random video that I got the design for the furnace from, and they also do a good job of describing the process. There are safety considerations. You're dealing with propane, burning propane, which could burn you, and definitely if this were, when it's melted, were to land on your skin, you would end up with a pretty serious burn. If you decide to try this, you're doing it at your own risk, and be very careful. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot for watching, and please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Have a good day. On to the next mess.